Order, order. Elliot Colburn to move the motion.
Thank you, Caroline, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And on behalf of the Petitions Committee, I would like to introduce two petitions to the House today dealing with legislation on animal testing and the promotion of non-animal research methods. And I would just like to stress, Dame Caroline, that we are here once again. This is becoming an annual debate now, which I think demonstrates the strength of feeling of our constituents and of people across the UK as a nation of animal lovers, that these procedures and processes really must start being brought to an end. And if I could just start by reading out the prayers of these petitions. The first petition, number 624876, advocates for an ending to animal toxicity tests and prioritising non-animal methods, or NAMs as I will refer to them throughout the course of this debate. This petition was started by Maria and closed in September 2023 with 109,378 signatures, including 233 from my own Carshalton and Wallington constituency. And it argues that NAMs are more predictive of human biology, economically advantageous, and prevent animal suffering. Now, in regards to the second petition, number 643611, this calls for the banning of the use of dogs for testing for research, citing their cognitive abilities and their emotional range. This petition was started by singer-songwriter and actor Will Young, who I'm delighted to see in the public gallery today, and as of now has over 30,000 signatures, including 35 from my own Carshalton and Wallington constituency. Now, I'd just like to begin with a bit of background information, if I may, Dame Caroline. Animal testing is currently covered under the Animal Specific Scientific Procedures Act 1986, which was amended in 2012 to include cephalopods as protected animals. Regulated procedures include acts that may cause pain, suffering, distress, or lasting harm to animals. And animal testing is often cited by some in the industry as being necessary for various purposes, including for drug development, veterinary medicines, and chemical or environmental safety testing. However, we have already made movements, for example, in the ban on testing for beauty products and cosmetics in 1998. And a recent written question answer from the government has confirmed that there are no laws mandating the use of animal testing. However, we are still in a very challenging situation where these practices are still being upheld. And I just want to reiterate some of the data that we spoke about last year. In 2021, over 3 million scientific procedures were conducted on animals. And if that number wasn't already bad enough, that was actually an increase on the previous years. That was an increase in the use of dogs by 3%, of cats by 6%, of horses by 29%, and monkeys by 17%. Now, we can only speculate as to why this number increased during that year, but it certainly doesn't tie in with the messages that we're hearing that the use of NAMs is supposed to be on the up and the use of animals is supposed to be on the down. But in addition to that, it isn't just the fact that these procedures are happening to animals altogether, it's also the awful conditions that the animals are often kept in whilst awaiting procedures to be done onto them. And a recent report from Animals and Science Regulation Unit described deeply troubling animal welfare standards in British laboratories between 2019 and 2021. And I'm sure many of us in our post boxes would have received emails from people who have sent us pictures and videos of some of these. And before this debate, I've seen some pretty awful things happening here in the UK that are happening to animals. And that is despite industry telling us that they uphold the highest possible animal welfare standards. And these failings include a non-human primate dying after becoming trapped behind a restraint device, 112 rats being crushed alive when they were moved in error to a compactor, and numerous incidents of animals being left without water or food. Now, as I said in my opening, the UK does purport to be a nation of animal lovers, and I truly believe that. But we need to make sure that we are updating our laws to truly reflect that fact. Now, I will acknowledge that there are efforts being made to promote non-animal methods or NAMs, including cell cultures, human tissues, computer modelling, and volunteer studies, and the organisations who are trying to invest and improve the use of non-animal methods to reduce reliance on animal testing. However, I do just want to pay particular scrutiny here. This is in relation to the second of the two petitions that we are debating today, which particularly draws into the issue of dogs. Now, dogs are most commonly used in what we call secondary species testing, where a test on an animal, normally a mouse or a rat, may have already been conducted. But some then go on in their research to conduct a secondary test on a different species, and a dog is very commonly cited as an animal to use in that period, in that experiment. However, the industry themselves are saying that this is almost completely unnecessary now. Organisations such as Pfizer and AstraZeneca have stood up at global health forums and said, we don't want to do secondary species testing anymore. Please help us find the roadmap to get us out of the need to do this. So I will gladly give way.
Thank you. May I thank my friend for allowing me to intervene? And his speech is very passionate on such an important matter. Now, in my constituent of Anismorn, we are an island of animal lovers, from dolphins and red squirrels to sheep and cattle and our feline and canine friends. And so it's no surprise that many of my constituents actively campaign for the rights of animals and are supportive of reducing the use of animals in scientific experiments. So my question is, they and I would like to know what steps the government is taking to support the pharmaceutical industry in the development and use of non-animal testing models.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that intervention, and I think over 100 of her constituents signed this petition as well. And absolutely, and I hope that the Minister, through her intervention, has heard that request, and indeed I'm sure that's the ask of all of us here in this chamber today, is to ask what more can be done and is being done to try and encourage people out of the use of animals and into non-animal methods. And I just want to pick up again on this point about animal welfare, because many people will cite the regulations that are in place in the UK for animals in experiment environments. However, this might breathe some light as to why these welfare standards are so low. As of 2021, there was just an estimated 23 full-time equivalent inspectors in the United Kingdom. And that's 23 inspectors trying to look at 3 million different procedures taking place. So with so much self-reporting going on within the industry and with so few inspectors, again, it leads to this argument that non-animal methods are a much better use of money, as well as the ethical and moral standards that come with it. And I want to just go through over some of the proposed solutions before I pass on to some of my colleagues. Now, Peter proposed a solution which is known as the Research Modernisation Deal, or the RMD, which offers a strategy to eliminate the use of animals in biomedical research, regulatory testing, and education. It prioritises non-animal methods, it conducts critical reviews to assess the necessity of animal use, and reallocates funds to non-animal methods. And this is aimed specifically to put the UK as, once again, a leader in innovative, ethical scientific practices. Furthermore, we've seen advances in technology, such as in vitro and in silico tests, innovative technologies like organ-on-chips, which offer higher levels of protection and prediction accuracy. And this is one of the things I want to stress. But before I do, I will give way to the chair of the Select Committee.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. And he makes a really important point there, that actually non-animal methods can be much more accurate than using animals in these experiments. And I would just like to ask whether he agrees with me that companies like Lush, who came to Parliament before Christmas advocating these methods, have actually shown the way through science that we can do better.
My right honourable friend, and that is something that I think we cannot stress enough throughout the course of this debate. It has been proven time and time again in the data that non-animal methods are much more highly accurate when it comes to predicting human responses than animal testing does. In fact, animal testing has such low levels of success when it comes to measuring how a drug or something else might affect a human that we wouldn't accept that in any other form of business, I don't think. Those levels of prediction are so poor that why are we still accepting this? It doesn't make any sense. Not when we have alternatives which can offer much greater clarity in terms of how humans will react to these products and these drugs. However, there are challenges standing in the way, and one of them remains around funding for NAMs. Now, both Pfizer, again, and AstraZeneca have come out to say that they don't want to do things like secondary species testing, but that regulatory guidelines often expect new drugs to be tested on animals, and there is a lack of consensus on possible transition timelines pushback from the industry resistant to change. However, in advance of this debate, I spoke to many scientists and industry leads who have said that they are crying out for change. They want to be at the forefront of non-animal methods, so we need to give them the tools to do so, and funding, absolutely, the way that we fund research must be looked at, because I will gladly give way.
Thank him for giving way, and he's making such a fantastic speech, standing up for all of those animals who don't have a voice in this industry, and those across the UK who want to support them. In terms of organisations who contacted me, they were talking about the need for change and for looking after animals, particularly beagle pups, post-testing wherever possible, but are saying that actually industry has been very resistant to engaging with rehoming centres even when the beagle pups have not undergone lethal testing. Surely we can do better and make sure that wherever an animal can have a life in a home that's so loving afterwards, that we make that happen.
My honourable friend is absolutely right, and again, I hope that the Minister has heard that through her intervention. And indeed, I think the sight of the commercial breeding of beagles in particular is something that's very hard for us to accept as a country. And again, I think the data shows how completely unnecessary quite a lot of this, if not all of this, is, because the accuracy of the tests are so low. But in addition, the very need to do a secondary species test on a dog is now so, it seems so unnecessary given the data, that it begs the question, why are we still allowing it to happen? Now, since we had this debate last year, there has been some welcome news internationally where countries such as Canada, Australia, and countries within the European Union have now come up with roadmaps to do just this. How are we going to end animal testing? And I think that must be the critical ask of government in this debate. We need a strategy, we need a roadmap to work with industry, yes, but working with campaign groups, with charities and other organisations, the people who are here represented in the public gallery today as well, to make sure that we can come up with a viable strategy, a viable roadmap to get us away from the use of animals and move more towards a non-animal method as the default standard. Now, I appreciate that some countries have found it very difficult to come up with precise timelines because of the disagreement that there is within the sector. But that does not mean that we should not try. So I really think that that is the key thing to take away from this debate. But there are things that we can do in the immediate and the interim term as well. And one of them must be that look on animal welfare standards. 23 people looking at 3 million procedures just simply isn't enough. An immediate review of secondary species testing and the necessity of it. And it is imperative that whatever happens next, that we prioritise the development and the adoption of non-animal research methods. The fact that they went up in 2021, and we actually stopped collecting data after that point, so we're not actually entirely sure as a nation now how many we're doing, which I think that in itself is a mistake. But the fact that they increased in that year period, just a few years ago, demonstrates that I really do not think there is enough impetus or progress behind the agenda to move towards non-animal methods. So I would ask the government, by investing and funding NAMs properly, by reallocating existing funds and promoting collaboration, the government has an incredible ability to bring people together. They have the ability to bring together industry, researchers, advocacy groups, campaigners and others to build us forward that roadmap and that strategy, so we can truly say that the UK doesn't need to use these anymore. We can stop the use of animals, and we can truly hold ourselves up to an incredibly high international standard as the nation of animal lovers that we all know that we are.